Surreptitious recordings are always tricky inside of a courtroom, and that's what we're seeing play out in this one. Let's bring in our guest for this hour to join us from Austin, Texas. We have criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Lindsay Richards with us. Lindsay, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us what you think about these recordings. This is something that it seems that the defendant did not know was happening. His employer was recording the garbage truck that he drove. He's on the phone with his nephew. The jurors don't know for sure if it's his nephew, but they are, through other witnesses, going to have that voice identified.
It's been very interesting. It is kind of hard to follow the conversation, to be perfectly honest. It's hard to kind of know. It's almost like they're speaking in code. You can't quite tell what they're discussing and how they're discussing it all the time. You know, I think this is evidence that is vital for the prosecution because in order to seek the death penalty, they need to prove some sort of premeditation. And I think this seems to be so far the only real evidence that they've introduced to show that. So I think that's a super important piece of evidence for them. But there's a lot of unintelligible, and there's also a lot of I didn't do anything wrong, which could be argued is really him just kind of freaking out about this affair, about this baby, and not necessarily about the offense itself.
You know, Lindsay, what we're hearing is that they are now going to be playing these recordings in Spanish for some of the jurors. So defense counsel made an objection, and because of that, now the judge is letting the recordings be played, at least portions of them that are in Spanish for the jurors. I was just taking a look at the jury makeup, and it does appear, so 12 plus 4 alternates, it does appear there are about 5 or 6 people that are Hispanic that are on the jury. So they would be able to understand that and maybe get a more complete understanding of those parts in which they say things are unintelligible.
Well, and I think it's important to, you know, tone, inflection, the way things are said matters. And so at least hearing that could be very beneficial. However, it's also a little bit unfair that some jurors would be able to fully understand what is being said and others may not. And typically you don't want one juror having more knowledge about evidence presented than another, or explaining in the jury room, oh, this is what I heard and this is my perception of it, as opposed to everyone hearing the same piece of evidence. So it is surprising to me that it's being let in, that he's allowed to play the actual audio recordings with some potential Spanish speakers on the jury who would have better understanding of a piece of evidence.
Yeah, that could be very interesting in the deliberation room. We don't know how many of those jurors do speak Spanish fluently or otherwise, but that it really could change up things.
Yeah, good point, Lindsay. Thank you. All right, coming up, we are going to switch gears.
So, thank you.
All right, the witness is excused. Let's bring in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Lindsay Richards. Lindsay, at this stage, a juror may be scratching their head to wonder why this witness was even called if he denies even knowing any of the parties. But there is more to come, and it's going to involve the DNA expert that's going to testify. But your thoughts on what we heard just from this testimony?
My thought mainly is I'm wondering why they set it up this way with the introduction of this witness before introducing the investigation and the DNA to show why this is even significant. Certainly, it seems like the defense is going to be there's alternative suspects. They were engaging in, you know, kind of an open relationship and meeting up with random people from the internet. So we should have heard first, has there been an investigation into these alternative people, and do we know who he was talking to, who potentially could have been there besides this defendant, and meeting up with him, and then potentially had the testimony of Mr. Kelly. Because right now it's confusing. It's confusing, I would think, to a jury.
Lindsay, is there anything else you would have done on cross? They were talking about, you know, past convictions, trying to attack his credibility, even though I don't even know if you needed to do that. Is there any other approach you would have taken from a defense's perspective?
I think attacking his credibility certainly is the #1 strategy on any cross-examination. But also, I mean, just having him answer the question, did you kill him? And he's going to say no. Of course. I mean, did we think that anyone, even if he did do it, would get up there and be like, yep, it was me? Of course not. So it's, I may be asking those questions and a little bit more pointing out the kind of absurdity of even asking that question to begin with. And that certainly this person's not going to admit to that.
Lindsay, thank you. All right, we're going to